I hope you're ready to set sail, because we're crashing here into Alundra today at the seas near the proving grounds. Anyway, today we're talking about Alundra for the PlayStation 1, published in America by Walking Designs, and we are talking about the English version. So Alundra is a Zelda-like clone, or like game. Zelda. I don't like necessarily saying clone too much. It sounds kind of more negative, but it's a Zelda-style game with way more platforming. It's 2D, very nice sprites and everything, but it has a lot more platforming. It is a isometric style view, and if you're not sure what isometric is, it's where you're not looking at a top-down style like 2D Zelda games were, and it's not where you're looking at sideways like Contra or something where you're running sideways left and right. It is at an angle, and this is to give like the world depth, like from the character's perspective of depth between things. And platforming and isometric to me are always very terrible ideas, honestly, in my opinion. But there is an audience for those kind of games. There's quite a few interesting puzzle games that actually use that type of point of view in some of the older games. I remember there was an NES one that I just could never wrap my head around. Now, I do feel like this is a much smaller kit of tools and such, but outside that, it is very Zelda style outside the platforming and small kit of tools to get around. You'll have several objects that you need to get through the world. Now, the game opens up with you on a boat, get shipwrecked, and you basically end up in this area that worships a statue, and you learn about this town and the backstory and these hellish dreams people are experiencing. Now, this isn't a fluffy anime type story either. This game gets dark. Like, real dark. Like, hell, honestly, I'm surprised some censors didn't fucking get in this game and be like, oh! Because, I mean, there's quite a lot of death in this title. Oof. Now, if you're looking for a PlayStation Zelda-style game, then you're probably not going to find too many things outside of Alundra that meet that critique. I can't really think of that many games that were even Zelda-like on the PlayStation 1, honestly. I'm sure if you look at the Japanese-only titles, there's probably several more you could get out of that, but that came to America? Yeah, good luck with that. But I do feel like Alundra hasn't aged well, honestly. It's not like it's terrible, unplayable, but like playing through the game, its combat and everything feels kind of clunky and engaging with enemies. Puzzles and that feel alright, but engaging with enemies feels just kind of all over the place. I play Link to the Past, feels nice. Good, smooth, everything is my fault if I die or something. Alundra feels chaotically weird. Enemies have invincibility flames and such that make engagement weird and stiff. It's just, It definitely feels like it could have used a lot more polish in combat. But it works. It functions. It goes, but, probably one of the more weirdo things outside of Victor's, if you're familiar with Walking Design localization, Victor's interesting choices of NPC dialogue. They did actually mess with enemy difficulty in this game. Quoted from the manual in US, monster difficulties will also rebalanced, generally to make a few of the bosses easier to kill. However, bosses were also made more dangerous in that they managed to hit Alundra. Their blows were much more lethal. This lessens some of the boredom of later bosses where they really weren't much of a challenge to fight, but they took forever to kill. End quote. And I can't obviously give a very good opinion on that because I never played the Japanese version. But I feel like at the end of this, I'm probably gonna recommend the Japanese version for more than one reason, but that being one of them. The end game is fucking pretty damn brutal, especially if you don't get lucky at getting a lot more health units. The health units in this game, a number of them are hidden behind a special shopkeeper that you can't actually access unless you find this gambling hall. And if you don't ever find it, you never get access to several increases of your health units. But just like heart pieces, you do find units of health hidden around the world itself and in dungeons and that. So it's not like this one place was the only place to increase your health. But, yeah, a little extra health would have probably made my in-game just a little bit better than dying brutally, horribly to the gauntlet of final bosses. But, not the best at everything. No, more of a JRPG person, more of a eventual puzzle thing, you know? I like puzzles, I like a little eventual, but I don't like isometric platforming, man. Now, as you're on the island, you'll be entering nightmares. These unique dungeons are one-time entries, and once you finish them, you don't ever get access to them again. Now, outside that, I think there was, two? I know there's at least one dungeon on the world map you don't get access to anymore. I think there's one other one that you also don't get access to, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. It might be. I know there's one definitely, but there are these collectible items that are actually for that specialty shop that you find throughout the world, and some of them are in the dungeons that permanently vanish. So if you miss them, you can't ever actually collect them all. Now, admittedly, you could do without the final prize you get from him, which is actually just absolute god mode invincibility. A strange reward, but hey, I guess if you went through all the trouble to look for all the damn things, I guess it's alright, but you know, it takes all the fun out of the game, But I would say the way they did the difficulty thing with bosses, supposedly it affected some monsters too. I didn't really have a problem with most normal monsters. A few of the bosses seemed kind of stiff, like the jelly thing's just kind of a boring, strange boss with its invincibility flames and that, but the in-game portion does get very brutal in the American version, especially if you don't have as many health units as you possibly could. A few hits could mean your fatal demise, and it's a little bit of a little gauntlet there, so you can look up on what's that website, what's it called again? The Cutting Room 4, that's what it was. So the Cutting Room 4. They actually have a chart where you can actually see some of the changes they did with magic and that. If you want to look into more about all the changes they did to the game itself. This has a weird effect on speedrunning too, oddly enough. Because there were different advantages. Ooh, excuse me. Different advantages between the Japanese and American version, though. I think most people just go with the Japanese version one still, though. I think. I'm not really sure specifically. I took a little peek at speedrunning with the game before, just because that's how I first really understood this, was from a topic talking about that. Now, interestingly about Alundra, it's kind of a spiritual sequel of a Sega Genesis game called Landstalker, as it features several developers that worked on Landstalker for the Genesis. So it is kind of a spiritual sequel. It is a lot more platformy in Landstalker as well. Probably even more worse in the isometric type of point of view, but that's another example of that point of view. What's also something odd about Alundra as well is it shares a song from Legend of Legania. Well, actually, it's the other way around. Legend of Legania shares a song from Alundra, because Alundra came out first. Now, what's interesting about that is the two games were both developed by completely different companies, but they do share the same producer on both games, and supposedly a few other dev people or between the two games, even though they're from completely different companies. But one track, a very sad track, plays, as far as I can tell, they're exactly the same in both games. Very odd, considering completely different companies. I actually spent quite a while trying to find any kind of answer about this song being in both these games. I literally can't find anything, at least in English, about it. If anyone actually knows anything about that, I would be very interested. Alundra, at the end of the day, is a Sony Zelda-style game for the PS1, and that's really enough to make it interesting to check out. If it wasn't for the price, but that's a different problem. Honestly, Alundra 1 isn't terrible. Its gameplay aged pretty poorly, but graphically it looks like a fantastic, nice little 2D game. The music's good, sound effects all right, the characters look very nice, but a lot of the combat just feels kinda creakety crackety and hasn't aged very well in my opinion. The dark story is very interesting for the time in America for the PS1. It's pretty dark shit in this game, even though Victor lined up a lot of gags and like, there's one NPC that literally just has a sulfur blow fucking persona, and it's just, honestly, it's fucking awful to be honest, but like I said, you know, back in those days, the NES, Super Nintendo, and early PS1 days, you know, that kind of localization was much more accepted because, you know, we were sad, stupid Westerners that didn't know the awesomeness of Japan. Of course, times have changed, yeah. Weeb culture has grown. Which is kind of ironic because now localization companies want to go back to that kind of stupid localization. Irony. Anyway. Rants aside, that I think it's alright. The sulfur blow thing is probably the more complainy thing I would complain about the game, with how they localize the characters, because it doesn't even make sense. It's a medieval setting. I don't really imagine people surfing in a very medievally kind of setting, you know. That seems kind of weird, but oh well. Outside that, I didn't have a particular huge issues with really any of the other characters' ways being localized, but yeah, the soulful guy, yeah, that one was kind of fucking stupid, but oh well. I can recommend Alundra for checking out if you liked Zelda-style games, but honestly, if you're looking for a really polished one, might want to consider passing on Alundra. But there are other reasons to possibly pass on Alundra. Like, you know, it's ridiculously high price on eBay in secondhand use. Now, if you want to get a Japanese version, which the price and the weird changes to bosses, I think, are both reasons to possibly check out the Japanese version if you have the means to play a Japanese disc. And it's very affordable, going between $15 to $25 for a complete copy. Very, very decent price. But if you want the American version, no. May the gods rest your weary soul in your grave. Like, loose discs are barely like $60 to $80, and then you're looking at $100 plus for complete crib cases and just fucking nightmare feel. And then of course that's not getting into brand new seal for $4,000. Oh boy, but at least the offer's free shipping. I know I bitch about that a lot being paid for, so hey, pops. Now for you weary souls who aren't worried about digital downloads, though, you'll be happy to hear you can get Alundra off PSN for $5.99 as a PlayStation 1 Classic. Of course, with the PSP store down, that means your only options to play it on should be the Vita and PS3, though I'm not really sure if it's compatible with the Vita. As far as I understand, like 99% PSP titles work on the Vita, so I don't know off the top of my head, because with PSN Store, you know, basically blocking you from looking at PSP and Vita games anymore, it just makes it a little more annoying to know whether it's fucking even compatible now, but that's Sony! But if you have those options, it's $5.99, so as far as I understand, though, with the PSP store down, any PSP games that are compatible with the Vita will show up on the Vita store, so worth checking out at. $6 price tag's not bad for digital. It's definitely, you know, better than like paying $100 for a fucking disc, you know. Oh, good lord, the fuck. I couldn't even find how much the European version even costed. Ouch. I couldn't even find it. I feel sorry for anyone playing these versions, man. Now, what would I give value-wise to Alundra? As I said, to me, my biggest complaint is really the combat just feels a bit unpolished. It just doesn't feel smooth like a lot of the good 2D Zelda games. Like smooth butter. But it's not a bad game at all. I think, considering the time in it, I think Alundra could be a good $29.99 price tag. And giving it, you know, around the Japanese copies used price. But yeah, kind of hard to justify $60 to, you know, like $150 for a copy. A little pricey. And with Victor in his hiding hole, Monkey Paw Games website is gone, so we don't even know if his secondary company even has plans of doing anything else now. As far as I know, though, the games are still listed on PlayStation Classics, though. Still there, as far as I understand now, so at least it's there still as an option. And finally, what do I think about the story? Of course, this is the spoiler section where we talk about the end, so I would say the story is a bit of an interesting angle, being a character that can hop into people's dreams and do things. But the story overall ends up that you find out the townspeople have been feeding the demon with their worship. It's one of those classic I need worshippers for power kind of situation. So the demon has been falsely giving these people hope in exchange for their prayers to give him power. At the end, after all the blood and sacrifices of like half the town's people through the adventure, finally everyone realizes they need to band together and push back the demon that they have falsely been worshipping. And then your final raid, you'll go to the sunken castle that is in the lake that you get told about at the beginning of the game. You go through there and you get a boss gauntlet. Now, as I mentioned, the bosses are pretty brutal at this point. They hit hard, like they take a significant chunk of my health away upon being punched, hit It's all in your mind. But it is doable. Definitely my biggest problem was the fact I didn't get extra health units by using the collectible item, because I never found the gambling fucking place so he would actually sell me stuff. Because until then, he asks for an outrageous amount of money that you can't actually even get in the game. So it just kind of hurt my total units of health. But ultimately, you overcome the evil demon, who is also a plant tree creature, oddly enough. I always like to say Final Fantasy V is interesting villain-wise, because, I mean, come on, it's a fucking evil demon tree, so I guess Alundra is in that team. Heyo, on the boat! But Alundra solves the problem, the remaining townsfolk rebuild their town, and you go along your way. Out in your new journey that we'll never ever see anything about, because Alundra 2 has absolutely nothing to do with Alundra. At all that I know of. There might be like some subtle dialogue about him maybe, but I've never played Alundra 2 all the way through. But yeah, it's basically the last time you see Alundra. It's a shame, because it honestly is a nice basis for a franchise. It definitely wasn't, as I say, perfectly polished, but it was a decent game. It's just a shame it just kind of went to the wayside in Alundra 2. Talk about nailing in your own franchise's coffin. Hell, as far as I understand, Alundra 2 didn't even do well in Japan, so yeah, that's not good. But anyway, that's what I think of the story of Alundra. It's alright. It's a get job done. It's not amazing, but it's definitely not a completely overused aspect of a storyline. So, But those are my thoughts on Alundra. It's definitely not the most broken thing in the world, but it's certainly not perfect by any means either. It's certainly no Link to the Past. But hey, it's not Alundra 2, and good lord, if you ever played that game, you know you're in for a shitfest. But that's probably something I won't ever talk about for a very long time. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. If you feel like you learned anything, please feel free to leave a like. And if you feel like you learned nothing at all, feel free to leave a dislike, feel free. And until next time, remember, don't worship a random evil statues. Who knows what they'll do to your mind.